I just hope people will understand my English.
Tell me your name.
My name is Arthur Pawlak.
You are a child of a Holocaust survivor, correct?
Well, I would not qualify him to be survivor of the Holocaust because he came from the generation of people who were directly affected by the times and what was happening in Poland in that time. A group of Jehovah's Witnesses, especially in the Central Europe of that time, found themselves in very specific or unusual situation because of their neutral stand towards war. They did not want to take sides in any conflict, nor they did want to participate in military or going to military, taking weapons, killing people. Probably the closest word it might come to word is they were like pacifists. They were promoting peace without regard who was in charge at the government. So because of that fact, Hitler and Nazis, from the very beginning of their regime, they were fiercely opposed to Jehovah's Witnesses simply because of their neutral stand. Hitler came to power in 1933. In 1935, in Germany, Jehovah's Witnesses were banned as organization and the persecution started. They did not like that. They did not want to support or even participate in national movement, Nazi national movement in Germany at that time. So they were, if you did not follow the fascist ideology, you were constituted an enemy. And their situation was more unusual because they were Germans. They were German citizens, if we're talking about Germany at that time. So when they were interrogated or questioned, they were wholeheartedly being obedient citizens of the Germany. However, when it comes to taking arms or joining military or joining a Nazi party, they did not want to have nothing to do with that because they pledged their allegiance to their faith based on Bible principles. So obviously that disqualified them from being considered as a good citizen at that time. So I'm going to tell you about my father, but also I think direct persecution from Nazis that my family faced was more of my mother's side. In 1930s, because of my grandfather, during the First World War, all his family was raised as German because they lived in Prussia at that time. And their first language was German. They joined military, German military during the First World War. When Poland was established in 1920, they moved to Poland. They were Polish citizens. When Germans came in 1939, they were looking for people that would support Germany because they lived in the northern part of Poland. Already that time, my grandfather was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So what happened is that they came in late October, November of 1939, and they were expecting that he would join a German military, become a Volksdeutsch, as they call them. But my grandfather said, my convictions are no longer affiliated with anything that has to do with war. One of Jehovah's Witnesses. My conscience would not allow me to participate in warfare. that's what it is. So that pretty much very same night, all their goods were confiscated, their business, and he and 4 children of his, my mother at that time was 2 years old, were deported to eastern part of Poland. So their deportation was strictly based on a fact that he did not want to participate in military establishment or German establishment of the government. He took the ground with his beliefs and convictions that no human being should take up arms and kill another human being. And as I'm getting older, I see and I appreciate a greater value to recall his stand. I never met him, but just knowing the fact, what stand he took, it gives me courage in life that I can maybe take the same stand if that will be necessary. The city of Bydgoszcz, or German Bromberg, became part of the Third Reich territory. They were annexed territory. So that city became German. Anyone that did not sign the Volksdeutsch documents were deported to the eastern part of Poland. So the direct persecution that my grandfather and his family faced was the fact that they lost everything they had, and the whole family was separated. They were put in a different wagons of the train, and they were shipped to eastern part of Poland. They did not know where they were going. They were just deported. Mind you, that was late, probably November of 1939. So the Nazi machine in Poland was starting to escalate the speed of that. When they, however, already at that time, Germans were organizing places, ghettos, camps for all those who were not desirable people in their eyes. After traveling for a couple of weeks, they got to the transit station. It's sort of on an important railroad crossing in eastern part of Poland, well known to those Holocaust survivors, town of Trawniki. And there was a section of where people would go, which transport, which destination. That was kind of like a transition point. Because of and I heard this from my mom and especially from my uncle and other aunts, because there was 4 children. My grandfather spoke fluent German. I think German was his first language rather than Polish. But because of that, and I also do believe that because of his beliefs, that he was put on a side, he was able to persuade one of the guards to look for his family. He got his family together. Maybe the guard took pity on him, realizing that he's speaking to a German person with a family and a small 2-year-old child. He told my grandpa to stand on the side, just wait till everything just dies down, all the chaos. It's a small train station. It's not a big train station. And I believe the building still exists, the original railroad building in that small town. The guard arranged a German farmer, because Germans immediately brought resettlements, bring German farmers to take over the properties. A German farmer came, he needed somebody that could manage the farm for him. So the issue of a language was important one, to communicate with Polish population and translating to German intact. So the whole family survived whole war in the little village, managing that farm. The irony of situation of Jehovah's Witnesses is that they were hated by Nazis and they were hated by communists to the same degree. As Jehovah's Witnesses, a human life is sacred, as I mentioned, and it's documented that the witnesses, they did not refuse the help to other humans who were going through persecutions, including Jewish people. They were risking their lives to help them. The reason I can say this with full conviction is because my uncle, the man who was sentenced to death, after the war he married a Jewish woman. They fall in love, they got married. By that time she became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. The family who managed to help her survive the Holocaust, and her brother and her aunt were also Jehovah's Witnesses. Their name, the last name is Skrzypiec, Skrzypiec, and I think they get recognized by Jewish state for their goodwill towards the family. They were recognized as righteous. Is that that's something worth of mentioning, because their love for the God that they believed, the love for the truth that they recognize, compelled them to help if they could, even in the case of risking their lives. There is the level of persecution that witnesses experience from German Nazis and from the communist government. It's not well known, but it should be recognized. When Germans view them as a spies of a communism, and the communists view them as a spies for fascism and capitalism. My father, under communists till late 60s, was persecuted by the Polish government because who he was. My other uncle went to prison in 1971 for 1 year because he was producing literature for Jehovah's Witnesses. What it takes to be different in the world, it doesn't have to be color of the skin or how you look, but unfortunately this world has in it the fact that you could be persecuted for what you believe in your head and in your heart, and we believe that this is something that's evil, and there should not be a place like that in mankind. Unfortunately, only Almighty God can fix that, as the history shows. One of the things was we don't celebrate holidays. Religious holidays, we do not observe them. We don't participate in any political rallies or holidays either. We have a reputation of being honest, and we have a reputation of expressing our beliefs as well. They are based on the Bible, the Father, Almighty God, that his name is English version Jehovah or Yahweh. We consider Jesus as his only firstborn son, who played the role of Messiah, whose death redeemed the mankind. We believe that what we see in the world today, it's a consequence of human tendencies and influence of evil, you may say. And we strongly believe that one day Almighty God, Jehovah, will put things in order by means of his kingdom. What can we do or not to do to our body? Well, probably the most important thing is the sacredness of blood. Both in Hebrew scriptures and in Greek scriptures, it's emphasized a number of times that something like that belongs to Creator. So our refusal, we do not refuse medical care or taking medication. Some people may have a misunderstanding of that. The one thing that we do not accept is any form of blood or blood products. And that's the difference. However, we live in a modern world where there is a plenty of medications that can substitute the blood cells when there is a medical need. But we strongly understand and adhere to the fact that blood is sacred. The issue of the understanding of the blood transfusion per such, that time, mind you, that was 80 years ago, was not as detailed. We did not have as detailed understanding of that. However, it's very interesting that just like with the issue of being neutral, we understood right away that there is a strong connection without much of medical understanding, that there is such a thing as sacredness of blood. So a lot of witnesses, they understood how important it is not only to shed the blood, but also not to take the blood as such. I was talking about the irony that the communists were hating witnesses as much as fascists did. So in 1944 and 45, when Russian forces with some Polish units came in to liberate, quote unquote, Polish territory, my uncle, who was that time 24 years old, because he did not want to join the army with other 7 men, he was arrested by the communists and sentenced to death for his beliefs. And they suffered a lot. They suffered months of imprisonment, harsh imprisonment. And mind you, that time, it was no such a thing as appealing or questioning the results of a trial. If you were pronounced to be sentenced, you were expecting to die. And there's no way, there is no chain of responsibility or somebody that would say, let's review it. There were harsh times. Once again, we're talking about, you would think that the liberating forces would have some kind of a compassion for those who were persecuted by the Nazi regime, opposite to it. So, to my father, so that example of my uncle, it shows you that to what extent Jehovah's Witnesses were willing to defend their faith. So my father was 4 years younger than my uncle. The war was ended. He found himself at the age when he was called to military. He refused to go again because he was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and he ended up in a few different prisons. He spent almost a year in a mine, a coal mine, as a punishment. He, while he was in castle, I think my grandmother passed away. And he was the only child because his brother died during the war on the front. He was not a Jehovah's Witness. So he went through a very, very difficult time. One of the three sentences that he got to prison. The center of Lublin, it's a prominent structure. It's very picturesque, built in the 14th century.
Was it also a ghetto?
That's part of the history. The king who built the castle, they were not allowed to own property in the Kingdom of Poland in 14th century. However, he was very reasonable to them. Partially the reason, because of that, the Jewish community congregated close to the castle that he built in the city of Lublin, because they felt like maybe they were more protected from the outside. So for the centuries, literally for centuries, the Jewish community thrived in city of Lublin. They have so the castle itself it was not populated by Jewish people, but it was a symbol of power in Poland for centuries. When Poland fell apart and Russia took over Poland at the end of 18th century, the castle was converted into a military garrison / prison, and as such survived the First World War. And when Germans came in 1939 to Lublin, they continued the legacy of a castle to be a prison. From what I learned about the castle was designed to be more like an interrogation center rather than prison. So it was only maybe designed to have 700 prisoners or so. But at some point, there were up to 30,000 people in the castle facility. So when the war ended, there was a huge massacre, and Norbert knows the details of that, in a castle when the Germans were retreating. Sad part is that when communists came in, they continued that same legacy that Germans left behind. They had probably even more prisoners in the castle after the end of the war than Germans did during the war. And only till 1989 that the Polish government acknowledged that such conditions existed in Lublin in the castle. So if you go to Lublin right now and you go there as a museum, it's relatively a new phenomena because of the delay of recognition. So my father found himself over there in about 1949. 1949. And one of his description, he was not shy to talk about it to me. I think it was him telling me what it took to defend the faith. Because of the neutral stand we were talking about, and because of understanding not to give man more honor to man than to God, witnesses of that time, one of the things that they were recognized, they were not saluting to Heil Hitler, to anybody. They were neither saying saluting to Polish authorities, nobody, right? Because it was against their beliefs. So each morning when there was a count of prisoners in his cell, and they had to stand in line before the cell guard, each time he received a slap on the face for not saluting. And he goes, I said, from my conversation, I said, how did you feel about it? He goes, it was just a matter of, it did not hurt. But one thing very interesting, a situation when he told me about, is when the very first encounter with the cellmates in that cell. When he was arrested, he was sentenced, he was pushed into that round rotunda type of a cell. One very small light bulb was hanging at the very ceiling. From the dark corners of the cell, the faces were emerging, coming to light. Mind you, he was only 22, 23 years old, so a very young man. Those prisoners were all kinds of prisoners. They were from people, from bad accountants to military, robbers, thieves, murderers, rapists, you name it. They had no type of consideration. They were just packed. So when he entered the room and he saw those men in such a horrible physical condition, I'm sure it was more than scary for a young man like that. What he mentioned too, that some became aggressive towards him. And like in any prison cell, there is one man that runs the show. And he kind of pushed people away from my father, and he goes, "Why are you here?" And my father goes, "Because I'm reading the Bible on one of Jehovah's Witnesses." He goes, "Can you sing?" And my father said, "Yes." He goes, "Sing." So my father starts singing one of the religious songs that we have. And he goes, "Stop." He turned around to all this 100+ men, and he goes, "Why are you troubling this boy? You murdered, you raped a woman, you raped a child, you were at the concentration camp, you were a guard killing them. This man is innocent." That really exemplifies level of what Jehovah's Witnesses went through during the wartime. And so, at the outset I said that that's maybe not necessarily directly related to the Holocaust and the horrible atrocities that Jewish people had to deal with, and many other victims. But the treatment of Jehovah's Witnesses from both sides shows you the inhuman treatment they had to endure, not because they disagree with a government, not because they look different, not that they committed some crime, but simply because they believe in something that was based on the Bible.
Could they have changed at any time where they could have gone to the Nazis and said, "Listen, I'm not going to believe in this anymore, and just you let me out and I will be on my merry way"? Or because they were Polish, was there a problem?
No, the issue of being Polish or not Polish was not a different at all. Because you have a number of, and I'm sure there is plenty of testimonies on that. They have a ton of German, French, Belgian, Dutch, Polish, Czech, Romanian witnesses who suffered not because they were ethnically unacceptable to fascists, or maybe they had some Jewish descendants, or being descendants of Jewish nationality. No, they suffered only because they did not want to participate in the
long was your father in this prison, in this castle?
In the tower.
And how many times?
In the tower he was once, and from what I gather he was there for about 2-3 months. But if anyone has a chance to visit the place and understand the conditions of that, 1 week would be more than enough.
Did he tell you what he ate, what he wore, how he slept, anything about what the conditions were?
2 years ago, I had the first time opportunity to go to Lublin and to visit the place where he was, and it was exactly like he described it to me.
How did he describe it?
That tower, it's like 800 years old tower, but it has 4 levels, pretty much the same. It's a circular cell, like a rotunda. Only one of those rooms has a window, and only one of those cells has like a concrete type of a bedding that's laid around the wall in a circular manner. So there's no question that this is the cell that he was in. The conditions, he told me that there were one blanket for 2 adult prisoners, no pillows, no straws, none of that. Whoever was sleeping, and maybe that's what created a health issue for him. Whoever slept close to that small window experienced draft of air. So my father ended up with tuberculosis. It took him, I was 61, it took him solid 14 years, if not more, to get better to the point of being capable of working. But one of his lungs was calcified as a result. But so it would mean that most likely either he contracted the tuberculosis for one of the prisoners, or maybe he was sleeping close to that, right, close to the window. He said that they had 2 buckets, one for private things, 2 buckets in the middle of the cell. And since there were so many of adult males in that room, and I heard this from other men who were prisoners there. It sounds comical, but it's not. If you want to turn to the other side while you were sleeping, everybody had to turn. And like they were just next to each other. And when I was thinking about being there, conditions, they were allowed to once, and maybe that was during the appel in the morning, they were allowed 15-20 minutes of being outside of the tower each day. But imagine rest of the 23.5 hours you inside, and no hygiene, no water to wash yourself, no conditions, sanitary conditions whatsoever, 0 privacy. I'm sure the level of discomfort and level of being deprived of these human necessities, I'm sure there was in my mind, that would be also a torturous type of experience for him as a young man. Food, what he told me about was most of that was just coffee, like a dark type of a coffee, and some kind of a soup.
How was it served?
Each one of them had like a bowl.
Big bowl, small bowl? Was it a
that I don't know. But they were getting like a big bucket of something, put it in the middle, and they had to help themselves.
Could they eat as much as they wanted?
I don't think that was enough there to to be left over.
But they served themselves, or did somebody serve?
That I don't know.
Okay.
But
How many times a day?
I think once a day.
Mostly on the cell was one guy who just
Orchestrating
yes,
that. Yeah.
in each one. So and this castle was place where they sent people to the other prison under the watch. It's some prison like this, you know this one.
Yeah.
And this was the prison where they beat people, they also kill it.
Right.
So it's
Right. So when my father, and I'm sure he talked to, when my father was, after he was released, and I'm sure he met other
Tell me
men.
how he got released. How did he realize this was over?
Well, that time, let's say, I assume, but he got sentenced, let's say, for 6 months.
Okay.
Or 3 months, and they were hoping that maybe they can break his spirit.
And this is after the war.
This is like 2-3 years after the war, yeah. But there was very turbulent times in Poland because the communists still were asserting themselves to have a Poland on their side or in their realm. So yeah, let's say he received 6 month sentence, and if he behaved well, he would be released in 6 months.
What was release like? Did he ever talk about how that day came and he was released? Did he ever talk about it?
He mentioned only once, and that was with connection with my grandmother's passing, because as I mentioned, she passed away while he was in prison. My grandfather died.
How did he find out that his mother passed away?
They could receive some kind of a mail ever so often, and some of the prisoners also could receive packages from the family with food. So I think he was close to one of his cousins who actually during the war introduced him to Bible. He was also one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Did he have a Bible in prison?
No.
So everything he knew was from memorizing?
Memorizing, yeah.
Did he pray in prison?
For sure. No doubt. So my father said, with the connection of my grandmother passing, because his father died when my father was 6 years old. His older brother, by 5 years, was killed at the front maybe 2 weeks before end of the war. And then he goes to prison. My grandma is by herself in a small village. My father was saying that when he left a prison, he had nothing to go back to. He goes like, it was one of the moments of, he knew that because his cousin arranged the funeral, that's another story, arranged the funeral for his grandmother. The Catholic Church did not want to bury her in a cemetery because she was a witness too. So in the middle of the night, they had to basically take her coffin and to bury her in a cemetery in a corner in the town of Krzczonów. When my father was released from prison, he goes like, I did not know if I should go back to the village where he was. It was about 20 miles south of Lublin, because he said, I have nothing to go back to. Needless to say, when I sponsored them, he went back once to Poland in the 890s, and one of his wishes was to to make a proper grave for mother, and he had a chance to do that. So she has a beautiful marble.
Where is she buried?
In a town of Krzczonów, Krzczonow.
Small village.
Yeah, small town. Yeah, so that was his beginnings. It's no doubt that those experiences shaped him as a young man.
And what lessons did you learn from him? What are things that you do today where you realize, what would Dad do? Like, where you need that feeling?
I do have a strong admiration for him because he was very fair man. He was honest man. I don't remember my father to wish anybody ill. And maybe that human kind of a person came not only from his beliefs, but also from the interactions and what he saw when he was growing up. And there were times like I was worried about something and he goes like, you have nothing to worry about, One thing, going back to the Holocaust, I asked him, because concentration camp Majdanek was outskirts of the Lublin, right? And the village where my father lived is on the south side of the country. So if you want to go to Lublin, you would take a track or road that would bypass the camp. Once I remember asking him about, I said, did the people knew about the concentration camp? I mean, that was the third largest concentration camp. He goes, they did. He goes, I said, did you see it? He goes, once. And he was that time, my father was born in 1925, so he had to be in his maybe 17 years old, 1942, right? One of the farmers in his village asked him to help him with some kind of transporting some goods to the city and come back, or just part of work, And so my father said that they were riding along the side of the concentration camp. And this farmer who was, riding the cart goes, don't look in their direction because you will be shot. So my father goes, I was afraid to look in the direction of the camp. But he goes, but what I was able to see, I cannot even express it. And he did not really want to go into the details, but from the concentration camp history, people were just there to literally to be starved and labor to death. It was not even a labor camp, it was just people were just dying like flies because of the hunger. So most likely he saw skeletons walking around,
Tell me 3 things that you've learned from your father. I know you've learned more, but 3 important things about your father.
Probably the first thing comes patience. Yeah. Second is to be able to navigate the difficulties in life. And he had a tremendous one thing that he and that it's related to the beliefs. Jehovah's Witnesses, they relate to their beliefs as a truth, right? Truth from the Bible, right? So when we express ourselves like, I found the truth, that means I found this good news in the Bible and empowers me to go forward and have a hope for the future. Interestingly, my father was able to help me understand that in life we will be disappointed by people, by humans, simply because we may have a good intentions, but we are imperfect. However, we are not going to be ever disappointed with the promises contained in the Bible, because they are sacred. They came from somebody who is perfect, from Almighty God, and that understanding of separation, of true understanding of what we striving for in life versus what we encounter that from imperfect human beings, allows you to determine what's really important. And for him, the fact that he was able to take a stand for his beliefs, for my uncle who did the same thing in the face of death, in my grandpa's situation when he gave up everything he materially had in order to stand behind his beliefs, that shows that those three men were understanding the value of the truth in their life and what's really important. How that would play out and how their lives would be different if they would compromise, nobody knows. Maybe they would receive temporary relief from their suffering or anxiety, but maybe not. Maybe their conscience would be always tinted with the fact that they would say, we could do better. We should not compromise.
What are 3 things that you want to make sure that your children know about you and the family?
Once again, I would like to relate to them what my father did, the importance of upholding something that's sacred to you. Once you have that conviction about something and you know it's true based on something solid, like the Bible, that withstood the test of time, and not be taken by disappointments brought by men, I think that's huge, because when you're watching the world scene, you're going to hear a lot of promises, but the source of those promises, it's so vague and so imperfect that you can be very easily disappointed. However, the hope for the future that we have as Jehovah's Witnesses, it's something special. It's something solid, we believe, and that's why we called witnesses Jehovah's Witnesses, because we're sharing that knowledge with others, and it gives me a pleasure to actually explain this to you, that Jehovah's Witnesses, for them the truth from the Bible is something priceless, greater than their own lives. And the experiences of witnesses in concentration camps are truly evidence of that. My name is Arthur Pawlak, and thank you for watching.